would have been much more likely that she was outside longer than 35 minutes.
If you've been following true crime online, you've probably heard about the Lindsay Clancy case. In January 2023, the Massachusetts mother allegedly killed her 3 young children inside their Duxbury home. Lindsay has admitted causing their deaths, but has pleaded not guilty to murder, with her defense arguing that postpartum psychosis left her not criminally responsible. Afterward, Lindsay jumped from a second-story window in an apparent suicide attempt. She survived the fall with devastating spinal injuries and was found outside by her husband, Patrick, who called 911. But one piece of medical evidence, combined with the apparently short window when Lindsay could have been outside, has fueled huge questions online. Some have even wondered whether Patrick could have somehow been involved, so I decided to investigate what the science can actually tell us. 82.1 degrees. That's Lindsay Clancy's reported core body temperature after she was found critically injured outside her Massachusetts home. Normal is about 98.6. That's more than 16 degrees below normal. But here's what stopped me. It was only in the mid-30s outside. Then I looked at the timeline. At 5:34 p.m., Lindsay makes a 14-second phone call to her husband. He returns home at approximately 6:09. At 6:11, he calls 911. Lindsay is found outside. And later at the hospital, 82.1 degrees. So how could somebody's body temperature fall to 82.1 degrees when it's only 35 degrees outside? And could that number tell us how long Lindsay Clancy was outside? Let's find out. I'm meteorologist Ric Kearbey. I've spent about 30 years in broadcast meteorology, forecasting and explaining weather on television in major markets across this country, even making national appearances on shows like Good Morning America and ABC World News Tonight. And this is Weather Nerdy Forensic Meteorology, where we use weather records, atmospheric science, and the physical environment to investigate questions surrounding real events. We're not here to start with a theory and work backward. We're here to find out what the evidence can actually tell us. So let's start with 82.1 degrees. At first, this sounds like a math problem. We know approximately how cold it was outside. We know her temperature at the hospital. So maybe we can plug in the numbers and run the clock backward. Except there's a problem. The human body isn't a thermometer with a countdown clock. There is no single cooling rate we can apply to every person. And Lindsay wasn't a healthy person simply sitting outside in the cold. She had just suffered catastrophic trauma. Trial testimony described complex fractures involving Lindsay's cervical and thoracic spine, including a burst fracture. Dr. Christina Carpio, the trauma and critical care trained surgeon who treated Lindsay at South Shore Hospital that night, testified about the severity of those injuries. Medical testimony also described loss of feeling below the injury. And Lindsay's high-profile defense attorney Kevin Reddington has publicly said that Lindsay was left paralyzed from the waist down. Dr. Carpio also testified that this type of injury can commonly cause problems maintaining blood pressure. Why could all of that matter here? Normally, when you get cold, your body fights back. Blood vessels constrict to preserve heat, and you shiver. Think of shivering as your body's emergency furnace. Those involuntary muscle contractions generate additional heat. But could injuries this severe interfere with those normal defenses? Could they affect shivering? Could they affect vasoconstriction or circulation? Could they interfere with thermoregulation, essentially the body's ability to control its own temperature? Those are medical questions. And without those answers, trying to calculate Lindsay's cooling rate becomes much more difficult. But I didn't want to leave those questions unanswered, so I went looking for someone who studies what happens to the human body in extreme cold, and I found Dr. Scott McIntosh. Dr. McIntosh is an emergency and wilderness medicine physician at the University of Utah, whose career has taken him into some of the harshest environments on Earth. His work has included mountain and wilderness medicine, snow burial research, and work alongside mountain rescue teams. And yes, he's even climbed Mount Everest. So, if we're going to ask what actually happens when a human body becomes dangerously cold, this is exactly the kind of expert physician I want to talk to. Dr. McIntosh, when you learned that Lindsay Clancy arrived at the hospital with a core body temperature of 82.1 degrees, what does that mean to you medically?
Well, there are a number of stages of hypothermia. So the first stage of hypothermia, well, and actually, let's even back up. So when someone's body starts to cool, then your body starts to kind of fight that cold in a number of mechanisms. The most obvious is shivering. So your body burns calories. It makes your muscles work in order to prevent that cooling of your body to go even lower. And that occurs really at like 98.6 to like 95 degrees. So your body's really trying to fight in order to keep that core body temperature from going any cooler. When the conditions don't allow for our bodies to heat up, continue to heat up via shivering, then we continue to cool. And 80 degrees or 82 degrees, which she arrived at the hospital, that is severe. That is in a category of severe hypothermia, and that goes beyond what your shivering mechanisms are fighting against, or shivering has stopped at some point, and basically your body is just kind of clamped down and trying to survive at that point.
How serious is that 82.1 degrees if you're treating the patient as a physician?
Oh, extremely, extremely. I mean, there are the stages, as I talked about earlier, is between 90 to 86, or I'm sorry, between 95 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit is considered mild hypothermia. Between maybe 80, and I think about temperature in Celsius, so that's why I'm converting back and forth. But then, about 86 degrees is that moderate hypothermia, and then anything below 27 is considered that profound hypothermia. And even healthy people, even if you warm them up from those severe hypothermia temperatures, a lot of them still don't survive.
Dr. McIntosh, what are some of the mental and physical statuses of someone who's reached 82.1 degrees?
Oh, good question. Yeah, a lot of times when when you are in these severe stages of hypothermia, the person will look dead. Will look dead. Will May have a heart rate could have a heart rate of 10 to 20 beats per minute. Might have a breathing rate of 1 to 3 per minute. Because again, that body is trying to conserve all of its resources, and doesn't want to expend any energy that it doesn't have to, and the pupils can dilate, which is a lot of times is a symptom for brain death, and so a lot of times with a very low heart rate, very low breathing rate, someone who looks very pale, looks very white, and maybe has frost on their body because they've been out all night, can look by all measures can look like they are already dead.
But keep in mind, Lindsay wasn't a healthy subject simply exposed to cold. She had suffered catastrophic spinal injuries in the fall. And Dr. McIntosh says that matters.
As I understand, it may have been a transection of the spinal cord at a certain level, but that would disrupt the hypothalamus, which is the area in the brain that helps regulate temperature. That would disrupt the hypothalamus's ability to communicate with the rest of the body. So, for example, the body might not be able to maintain that vasoconstriction in order to vasodilation or vasoconstriction. They might not be able to shiver in those in those areas, and a lot of our muscle mass is in our is in our lower body, in our thighs and our hamstrings and such. So your body might lose your ability to shiver effectively with those injuries.
That's important. Lindsay's injuries potentially remove some of the very defenses a healthy body uses to protect itself from the cold. So yes, there are legitimate physiological reasons Lindsay may have cooled unusually quickly. And there's another complication. Even in a completely healthy person, shivering doesn't last forever.
Yeah, so at that point, you've gone through the stage of trying to shiver and trying to prevent further hypothermia. Shivering may stop. I mean, it's different in every person, but is considered to stop around 86 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's gone from trying to fight off further cooling to kind of retracting and just trying to survive.
So now we have both sides of the equation. We know 82.1 is extraordinarily cold, and we know Lindsay's spinal injuries could potentially have accelerated her cooling. But there's still that clock. Lindsay's last known phone activity was at approximately 5:34 p.m. Patrick reportedly returned home at approximately 6:09. That 911 call came at approximately 6:11. That's critical. Those roughly 35 minutes are not a known 35-minute outdoor exposure. They're the approximate period between Lindsay's last known phone activity and Patrick's reported return. We do not know exactly when during that period she went outside. But I wanted to know something else. If Lindsay's body had cooled from somewhere near normal body temperature to 82.1 degrees within anything resembling that apparent window, would that surprise someone who actually studies human cooling?
The body doesn't cool, very rarely cools that quickly. So we've done studies where we've measured temperatures and the temperature drop when people are completely buried in snow. They have snow that's packed all around them, around their face and in their head, and they're basically, a couple feet under the snow. Of course, we have breathing apparatuses that they breathe through, and the cooling temperatures or the rate of cooling that we measure when someone is completely buried in snow is about 1 to 3 degrees Celsius per hour. There have been cases of extreme cooling where you have water rushing over someone's body, and therefore you could decrease the core body temperature of maybe even 9 degrees in 1 hour. But that's with ice cold water running over you for that duration. For the body to cool that quickly, it sounds very unlikely.
Very unlikely. And remember what he's comparing this to. Dr. McIntosh has studied cooling in people buried in snow. But I have more questions. Dr. McIntosh, if you were reviewing this case professionally, what additional evidence would you like to have to draw a final conclusion?
I mean, we'd go back to how we lose body heat. So, obviously the exact meteorological conditions that were on that night. So the environmental conditions. I mean, 35 degrees Fahrenheit is really not that cold. Then you want to know the clothing and the layers that someone was wearing. It sounds like there was not a whole lot of convection with just minimal wind. And having contact with ice. Again, when we bury people to do studies on avalanches at the University of Utah, we see temperature drops of about 1 to 3 degrees Celsius per hour, which that's being in contact with the snow, and of course snow has a lot of air in it, but those cooling rates are really not that fast. I'd say many hours to lower your body temperature to a temperature of 82 degrees. But yeah, it's challenging to consider that rapid of a drop that quickly.
That's quite the assessment. And notice what Dr. McIntosh asked for: meteorological conditions, clothing, contact surface. Those are exactly the kind of variables we've been reconstructing. So what can we reconstruct? We can reconstruct the environmental side of the event. And when I reconstructed the weather during the previous 24 hours in Duxbury, I found something important. The day before had been relatively mild and wet, with temperatures in the low 40s and precipitation transitioning from rain to snow. Then temperatures fell below freezing overnight. That creates a freeze-thaw-refreeze cycle. So the surface Lindsay encountered probably wasn't simply soft, fluffy snow. The meteorological evidence points towards something more like a hard, icy, refrozen crust. And that distinction matters because your body doesn't lose heat only to air. Wind can increase heat loss through convection. Wetness can accelerate cooling. And if a significant portion of your body is lying directly against a cold, icy surface, heat can also be transferred through conduction. So where does that leave us? 82.1 degrees is extraordinary. It establishes that Lindsay Clancy was profoundly hypothermic when that temperature was documented. Can I tell you it proves she was outside exactly 35 minutes? No. 20 minutes? No. An hour? No. We still don't have enough information to turn 82.1 into an exact clock. But after speaking with Dr. McIntosh, I don't think we can say the temperature tells us nothing either. An expert who studies human cooling in extreme environments looked at this apparent timeline and told us cooling that rapidly would be very unlikely. And he believes a longer exposure is much more likely. That's not proof of an alternate timeline. It's a scientifically legitimate reason to keep asking questions. And maybe that's the real forensic finding here. Sometimes an investigation doesn't uncover the number that solves the mystery. Sometimes it uncovers why the number can't solve the mystery. 82.1 degrees is an extraordinary piece of evidence, but it isn't a timestamp. We can't use it to tell you precisely when Lindsay Clancy went outside. What we can say is that one of the experts who understands this science better than almost anybody I could have asked finds the apparent cooling rate very unlikely. And that leaves us with a question that, at least from the publicly available evidence, remains unanswered. When did Lindsay Clancy actually go outside? I'm meteorologist Ric Kearbey, and this is Weather Nerdy Forensic Meteorology.